Good evening, everyone. Happy Mommy Mondays. Ooh, ooh. I don't know where that came from. Just know that it's excitement leaving my body because if it stays, I'm going to explode. You guys have been blowing me up about this anxiety thing. And so we are doing part two today. And I am thrilled that we get to continue these type of conversations because here at Mommy Mondays, we are women, families that want to be open and have open, honest, transparent conversations about topics that matter to us. And so to be able to shed light on something like anxiety and really ask the question, is that anxiety or is it something else? Is so beneficial to both us as moms as well as our families. So as you get in, per usual, let us know who's here. Comment. I'm checking the comments throughout today's conversation. And if you're new to Mommy Mondays, please know that this is a free space. So any questions, comments, concerns you have, put it in the chat. We want to have this dialogue between me, the specialist, and you so we can really hone in on anxiety. All right, so I'm gonna give it a few moments and we'll get started. There we go. So we can. All right. And if you guys could let me know if you could hear and see me okay, that is always appreciated. There we go. And when you get in, please share this out. I know there were several people that reached out to me that missed the live because they didn't see it. So if you could please share this out so that way people can know that we are on and just take this opportunity to speak to Rose while she's here. We're here. All right. There we go. Last time we spoke about anxiety, man, Rose really highlighted some awesome things. So if you missed part one, hey Cece, hi love. No worries. If you missed part one, you can join in with us now and then go back and watch part one. I'm going to give you a little bit of a recap so that way you know where we're coming from and where we've been. But you'll be able to follow along in today's conversation because we're going to be talking about today, are we training our brain to be anxious? And what about the babies? Okay. Last time we talked, Rose gave us some information about things that we can take, supplements that can support our mental health. We talked about how the world sees anxiety, and really the root of it is worry and fear. So, what are some things you could do? She gave us some ideas about some coping skills, and so today we'll talk some more about that. But really, start at the beginning, I guess, in the sense of, are we training our brain to be anxious? So, without further ado, I give you.
Hi, everyone. I am so humbled and happy to be back with y'all tonight. Thank you, Kia, for having me come back. And please drop any comments, questions, concerns, anything that you're worried about or thinking about in the comments, and we will address it tonight.
Yes, yes. I will highlight the comments as they come up on the screen because I think it's so important for everybody to know it's not just something that's lurking in your brain. There was so much stuff that you hit on last time, Rose, that was kind of like, is that a stupid question or is that a stupid way of thinking? And it was like, no, it's a thing. And so we just help each other out as a community with our thought process around something like anxiety. So thank you for coming back.
Happy to be here.
Yes. So let's dive in. We talked about last time, and I asked you the question, I kind of left it there. Is it possible to train your brain to be anxious?
So, I love that question only because I don't think there's a good answer for that one, right? So there you have it from the expert yet. Okay. So I actually went back and started doing a little bit more like overall research, and you know what I found out? That really it still boils down to nature and nurture, right? So there was a study done on identical twins, right? To see what happened as they got older and they had anxiety. So was there a genetic link? So they studied, and I don't remember how many it was, but they studied identical twins. And then they also studied fraternal twins. And they did find that there is a link for identical twins to have some sort of a genetic predisposition to anxiety. Okay. Yes, exactly that. What they couldn't identify is what gene or what set of genes, because oftentimes it's a set of genes, right, that cause different things. And they couldn't identify that. So there you have it. Yes, there is a definite genetic link for anxiety. But then let's go more into this nurture thing, right?
Okay.
How many of you have ever had like a grandma or a grandpa that was just like fidgety and nervous all the time and worried about everything? I know I grew up that way. My grandmother raised me, and she was a nervous Nelly, as we used to call them, right? Showing my age a bit there. It's not a term that I necessarily use, but it's definitely one I heard growing up, right? And she was always like jittery and everything. And so many times I would hear her complain, well, I can't breathe, or my chest feels heavy, or I'm nauseous, or whatever, right? All the things, right? And I didn't even realize that I had picked up on that until I went to school to, further my degree and my education to become a counselor. And I was like, oh my gosh, she trained me into this.
Wow. You know what's interesting about something like that? Because I was reading something, and it was talking about how, how people have social anxiety. And if you guys, when you get in, comment below, what are some feelings that you feel within yourself that kind of makes you feel anxious? Because I want to hone in on the feeling of anxiety, because like we said last time, just because you have the feeling of anxiety, I think it's a normal thing to feel anxious at times, worry and fear. But you don't have to have a mental illness to deal with anxiety, but to be aware when it comes on you. Like, for example, I get sweaty, or I get the butterflies, or I know this is kind of TMI, but my friend Jen will appreciate this. Every time we would go to sing at church, we would both like feel our stomach rumbling, like, I gotta poop. I gotta poop. And it's like, oh my God. And so you can feel that, right? Hi, Mama Annette. Tell us, how do you know when you're feeling anxious? But I think when that happens, after a while, you begin to realize, now every time I go to sing, I feel like I gotta poop. And so then you make sure you go to the bathroom beforehand, or you make sure that you're kind of honing in on it and just not letting it be just wild, in the sense of, I'm just going to go with it and see what happens, because that doesn't feel good. But what I was reading was that you can, because you tell your brain, I'm about to go sing, so I'm about to be anxious. I'm teaching my brain, hey, every time you go to sing, it's time to be anxious. So have you seen that in some people?
I have, totally have. And for each person, it's something that they're afraid of. So I like to boil anxiety down to like fear, right? Mm-hmm. And what is that reaction then to that fear? Are we trying to control something before it happens because we want a specific outcome, right? Yeah. Or are we trying to provide a safe space for us, right? Mm-hmm. So when you mentioned singing in the choir, my thought, and you can, highlight on this, was, oh my gosh, what if I make a mistake? What if I sing off key? Right. And so that's a fear of like that uncertainty of like, how well am I going to sing today? And then also wanting to control that outcome. Right.
That's good, Rose. That's good. Because we typically, and Cece had said difficulty, one of her feelings, she feels difficulty breathing, heart races, rushing to the bathroom. See, I should have just said it like that. Cece, you have a better way with words instead of I have to relieve myself. Mama Annette said nervous jitters. I think that's so profound that you said that, because what you're telling us to do is take it a step further. So I am feeling anxious. Why am I feeling anxious? Oh, I feel like I'm going to sing off key, or I didn't practice enough and Lord only knows what's going to come out of me. So then I can take that and for the next time, work on those things that are rooted in fear to kind of help that thought process the next time that anxious feeling comes about.
And so, one thing I often tell people when it's something about being anxious about performance related things, whether it's in a job or singing in the church choir or something like that, is I ask them, well, how well did you prepare for this? Because then they'll tell me, well, I didn't prepare at all. And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe you can be prepared to fail just a little, right?
I'm trying to stay focused, but my fingers want to go, right? Because I'm like, that's it, Rose. And it's so funny because we'll get that feeling of anxiety and we just run with that feeling versus no, I poorly prepared. And that is the truth of it. So let me calm down. I'm going to get what I'm going to get.
Or it can work on the flip, right? Because you can turn around and say, well, I have prepared as much as I feel like I can. I remember I did that for an exam once. It was the final exam, and I studied all the way up until like the last 45 minutes. And then I went to visit the professor and I said, I have studied to the point where I can't study anymore because I don't know what's going to be on the test, but I've studied. So I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be. She laughed at me and she goes, listen, you already have like a 95 in my class. I really don't think you need to worry. Well, it was a thing, right?
That makes sense. And right there, that could be the healing thing. And you talked about this last time about how talking it out with someone can really help with it. And would you say that's a coping skill?
So it depends on how you use it. Some people use coping skills for coping with the actual situation, but then they'll turn around and some of those coping skills actually become healing skills, right? Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it's about where you are sitting in that moment that you are using whatever that technique is, right?
Okay.
And so I want to honor that because there is a great deal of overlap between coping skills and healing techniques. And you can use them and interchange them, but it's where is your mindset in? Am I at work and do I just need to cope? Well, then I'm going to do breathing. Am I at home and I just want to exhale my day? Then it's more of a healing context. So you guys get to decide what is the context behind the skill or the technique that you're using and direct it appropriately.
I'm sorry, my brain is exploding. Because you don't hear that in normal conversations when you're talking about coping skills. And you definitely don't hear that in conversations about mental illness, feelings, mental health. Because I think sometimes we get in the mindset that once I am that way, I'm stuck that way. There is no healing beyond this. And a lot of that fear that you're talking about comes from insecurities. Mm-hmm. And so knowing that I could be healed of my insecurity is being highlighted. I need to heal that space in there, which they're going to kind of run over to my thought process. Then it'll run over to my feelings, such as anxiety. I like that. I'm sorry. I just got to do that because, like, for example, you feel anxious because, oh my gosh, what if I don't, we're coming on Mommy Mondays. What if I don't say the right thing? What if I stutter? Well, everybody's going to laugh at me, you know? And so one of my skills, and it's funny because I thought it was coping, but it's actually healing me, is having my notes. Like one of the moms, actually, I think it was Cece or I think it was Cece, told me it's okay to have notes, you know? And I'm like, so now?
Girlfriend. See, you can't see him because of the, see?
Right. But when you get into public speaking, you're not supposed to have notes. The elite have it all memorized, but it's like, but that fumes anxiety. So having your notes, not only is that a coping skill, but that's a healing skill for settling your mind, your body. Like, I got this, I can do this. And so it changes that self-talk to, I got my notes, I'm okay.
I'm just going to point out that every TED Talk that I've ever seen with a female, because I love to watch female speakers because I learn from them, right, has always used some sort of a PowerPoint. And the PowerPoint guides them, right? It's
Yeah.
right. So it's okay to have your cheat sheet, your notes, right? Because they're still using PowerPoints to help guide them, right?
Yeah.
Use the resources that are available and be okay with it. I want to empower our moms and our females and not think less because, oh my gosh, I had to write it out. If I didn't write it out, I would not be a very good speaker. Okay.
True. And that's a good skill to hone in on. And it kind of does both. It helps you cope with the anxiety that you can foresee coming. And it helps heal. Like, I don't have to be like everyone else. I am me. And this is part of my process. Cece says, because I'm a write it. She said, be resourceful. Yes. Mama Annette had said, my tongue gets tired. Need to know what that looks and feels like. Oh my goodness, that's hilarious. That's a great way of putting it. And oh my goodness, I love this conversation because all these things that you're talking about too, we could teach these to our children.
Yes.
Which leads me to another question I wanted to ask you, which is on my notes. In 2023, psychologist Richard Weisbrund said in an interview with CNN that anxious teens are about 3 times more likely to have an anxious parent. Is anxiety, well, we talked earlier about it being born versus nurtured. But what are some things as parents we are likely modeling to our children displaying anxious behavior?
Okay, so back up for 1 second because I also saw something when I was kind of going back over anxiety stuff that 1 out of 8 to 10 children could be diagnosed with an anxiety type disorder. And we're talking 1. So the numbers was 1 out of 8 to 10. So that span between 8 and 10 children. So that's pretty high if you think about it.
Yes.
Like,
I mean, I got 4 kids, so I got
right?
half the chance. Jesus.
Can we not go there, ma'am? We're going to teach you some
Okay, I'm
skills.
sorry. Okay, focus. Okay. Wow,
Okay.
that is very high. So do you think, I mean, we talked earlier about it being, some people being born with it. Do you think that what they're seeing from us as parents could be encouraging anxious behavior?
I don't want to use the word encouraging. I think our children model us, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many times have you ever heard that saying, oh, I married my mom or I married my father, right?
Yeah.
Because that is what they perceive, our children perceive as normality, right? So what our parents do, what our other family members do, like grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, right? Mm-hmm. Even our close-knit community, if we see things, right, then we integrate that into our schema of what normal is.
That's true.
Right? So if we've integrated in fear, right? If we've integrated in worry and that need to always be safe, it was interesting. One of the things that I saw that, at least for children and teenagers, that contributes to anxiety, I was stunned. Helicoptering our children.
That's a parenting style.
Okay,
so
well,
that fosters anxiety?
Yes, that was one of the things. So it was temperament. Wait a minute, I gotta check my notes. I know I wrote it in here, but it was like temperament. There it is. Where are you? Come on. Risk factors like trauma, things like that, but also helicopter parenting. Because think about it, in reality, if we are helicoptering our children, what are we not allowing them to do?
learn for themselves.
The other thing is we're also teaching them that they have to be afraid of making a mistake.
I'm guilty of that.
So am I, trust me. I think all parents that want to be good parents do that. But at what point can we then, bring it back into a healthy realm of like, hey, I'm going to, number one, teach my children how to make appropriate choices and decisions, right? And we start that young, right? We start with, do you want eggs or do you want cereal for breakfast? Do you want to wear this piece of clothing today or do you want to wear that one? Because all of those things are within the realm of control as the parent, but it's giving children a choice. And then they can learn, hey, what worked for me? Oh, eggs worked for me better than cereal because it stayed in my tummy longer and I wasn't hungry, right?
Yeah.
So what I look at parenting as is we are supposed to be the safety net for our children, but we should not be raising children. We should be raising adults.
Come on. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So go on.
No, go. You dropping knowledge. Go ahead.
Thank you. So when we think about it as, are we raising adults? Then what does a healthy adult look like? Well, a healthy adult is not one that is debilitated by anxiety because they can't control their future and they're looking for a safe space. I'm gonna shut up now.
No, because you have me thinking, like, if I can give a live example of that, like, your kid just spilled milk. Matter of fact, Ava, okay, she is just doing the most with this whole pouring drink. And one time I like yelled because I'm like, what are you doing? You're 2. You have no business like pouring a gallon of, and I'm going off on her. And she's just like,
what's going on?
What is a gallon? Why are you yelling at me? Right. Whereas I look at like now, like Levi, if I just look at him and I could see that fear, that fight or flight that you see in kids, and it can kind of like, Mommy, can I do this? Mommy, can I do that? And I'm kind of like, of course you can pour drink because you're 5, 6 years old. You can manage that. But I'm seeing patterns from when he was younger where I'm doing exactly what I'm doing to Ava, and he has taken it now and is exhibiting some anxious behavior. Whereas Ava, I just feel like Ava is invincible. She gonna do what she gonna do anyways, but it doesn't scare her. Whereas, and so when you're talking about our children and how we can foster through helicoptering, we just want them to do things right and do well. We don't want them disappointed, but we're also teaching them that they can't be their own safe place, that they can't make their own mistakes. And so it's kind of like, it's making me really look back on some things that are being highlighted, not, to feel bad as parents, because these are things we don't know until we know. But it's kind of like, okay, I'm aware of it. So going back to those coping and healing skills, what can I do now to heal what has transpired with Levi? And I don't know about Ava because she don't need coping skills or something like that. But you know what I mean? Coping skills for me. Okay.
Okay, so let's back it up a little bit because I really wanted to address tonight. I wanted to expand more on the vagus nerve. Okay. So the vagus nerve runs from our brain down to our sacrum. There's 2 that run all the way there. So it's the dorsal and then the parasympathetic nervous system. The ventral vagus nerve stops around chest level, like just under the heart, roughly, right? And so they are the things that cause us to go into the fight or appease. There's 4 of them. Okay, I have them on my cheat sheet here. I keep mixing them up today. But the idea then is to recognize, where are we? Are we in the fight mode? Are we in a flight mode? Are we in a freeze mode? Or are we appeasing? Like, that's what I thought of when you shared the story about Levi. Is he then stuck in like this appease mode, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that is a powerful thing to be able to discern as a parent. Like, okay, well, where is my child in their vagus nerve system right now? Right? Are they
Ooh,
fighting with me? Are they fleeing from me, as in they're shutting down? Right? Are they going into the other room? Right? Because they don't want to talk to us. Right? Are they frozen? Or are they people pleasing then? Right? And so it's really powerful to think, wow, I can help my child so much more, right? If I just can step back for 15, 20 seconds, look at this child that I love dearly and be like, oh, wow, they're kind of angry. They're in fight mode. I need to, deactivate that before I can even think about getting to the point of maybe there's some discipline that needs to happen, right?
yeah.
We have to stop them from running away and fleeing. We have to stop them from shutting down, right? We definitely need to find some way to stop them from being people pleasers to the point where it could harm themselves because they're so busy trying to, have friends that maybe are the wrong friends in the future,
Yeah.
right? Or keep, a romantic partner in the future that maybe is not healthy for them. So I think that's where, as a counselor, my concern is always like, hey, if we can recognize where our children are at, then we can work on the coping skills and the healing thing, right?
Yeah. And I think what you said too, and correct me if I'm wrong, that'll also help us to see that um, uh, nature versus nurture. Because
Mhm.
then when you can identify that and discern that, is this part of their personality or this is a learned behavior, and figure out, okay, so how can I deal with it? So my question to you is, do you handle, let's say, for example, you have a nervous Nelly, and then you have someone that's anxious because of um, what we've as parents has modeled or what they've seen. Do you do you handle them the same, or do you give them different skills based off of if that's the way that they are, if they're naturally anxious, or if this is a learned behavior?
So I like to personalize everything to the person in front of me and meet and try and meet their needs or discern what, hey, maybe this is what their needs are, right?
Mhm.
So with children, I always make it individual. Even with all 11 of my children, I had to learn how they felt loved and how they showed love and all the things, right? Which
Yeah.
also then meant, oh, how can I know when they're angry? Are they angry because of, they got a bad grade in school? Are they angry because, oh my gosh, they got so wrapped up in playing outside that they forgot that they needed food, right? And so I think, right? I think that as parents, especially as those loving mothers, right, is that we have to be able to find the coping skills that work for that individual child, right? Because
Mhm.
I'm sure you have a child that you can just gently look at them and they know, oh, yeah, that's going to get mom mad. Maybe I don't want to do that. But then we're also going to have that child that's like, well, I don't care if mom gets mad.
Yes, I have both.
I have that. Some of them wrapped up in more than one child. But again, so then what the techniques that I used for my angry child certainly didn't work for my people pleasing child, right?
Yeah.
Because the angry child needed mom to help him figure out why he was angry, like what was causing that anger. The people pleasing child, I needed to be able to say, hey, what's going on here? You know, why aren't you standing up for yourself? Right.
Yeah.
And so those are very different techniques, even though they're talking points, right?
Yeah.
So I think that again, we're going to hit that topic on that coping skills, but every coping skill is going to be different for every child. Every coping skill is not going to work. When I talk about stress management on babes, I literally tell them, and they're always floored. Hey guys, you need 30 different coping skills minimum. And they're like, ma'am, please. And I'm like, no. I said, what if one of your coping skills is going for a hike? I'm like, but then your coworker upsets you. I like, guess what you're not doing? You're not going for a hike.
Yeah.
And then they look at me and they go, oh. And I'm like, exactly. I said, so, have different types of coping skills and you have to recycle them. Okay. Because just like if you eat your favorite food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a week, it's not your favorite food anymore, right? Your coping skills are the same. If you use the same handful of coping skills every time for every situation, they stop working because our brains adapt so very quickly, in fact. And we have to keep in that our brains do adapt.
Yeah. When you say that too, when you talk about 30 coping skills, I think as parents too, that's even more necessary, because if our kids are picking up on our patterns and our behaviors when we're anxious, I would pray that they pick up on how we manage those spaces with our coping skills, but then also to diversify what we know as coping skills so we could teach it to them based off of who they are as a person. Like begin those conversations, begin teaching them, because I think one of the problems with the conversations on even around anxiety is avoid those triggers, avoid those anxious moments. And I feel like, and let me know how you feel, I feel like instead of trying to avoid it, and we're not going to power through it, but let's get understanding on it. Let's get, let's notice it. Let's have some self-awareness. Let's talk through it. Especially when we're trying to teach it to our kids and like, hey, whoo, did you see that? Mommy almost lost her mind, but I'm so glad I took my deep breaths. You know what I mean? Come on, let's go for a walk. Mommy is feeling anxious. I'm about to lose it. Let's, and it can kind of help those conversations. So do you think when we're dealing with something like anxiety, it's better to avoid or better to work through it for our kids?
So I have had a number of clients that had anxiety so bad, and everybody had told them, oh, you just have to avoid it. You just have to stop those thoughts. You just have to ignore it, move on, distance yourself, all the things. Mm-hmm. And I have never had a person tell me that it works. Not one. So I had
it not work.
It did not work. And she was the sweetest client. I had a wonderful client before I moved to Washington, and she was on the autism spectrum, very high functioning, very intelligent, and she had so much anxiety. Right. And everybody kept telling her, oh, just do the thought stopping, just do the coping skills, just do that. And I finally said to her, I said, okay, well, how well is this really working for you? And she goes, Rose, it is not working at all. And I'm like, okay. I said, then guess what we're going to do? We are just going to acknowledge that you're anxious right now, and we're just going to power through it this way. And we started acknowledging it. We started validating that she was anxious. We started saying, hey, it's okay if I have to play with beads and sort beads while I'm on telehealth with Rose. Right? Because that helped her focus and it helped her share the things that she needed to share. Right. Mm-hmm. And so what ended up happening is her anxiety level started dropping because she was no longer running away from it, and it wasn't crippling her to the point where she was freezing, and she wasn't angry about it anymore, right? Because she was finally starting to gain, I don't know what word I want there, but maybe gather the coping skills, but gain that self-awareness of what it was that she needed in order to reduce that anxiety, because she was no longer fighting the anxiety in her body and in her brain.
That is so key, because when people say, well, just stop feeling that way. And it's like, okay, but some chemical reactions, some things have already happened. What was that? The V word that you said earlier that runs through our body?
Vagus nerve.
Our vagus nerve. My vagus nerve has already set off. Okay. Once it's off, I can't run and go get it. So it's I love how you're basically saying, don't just be like, well, just stop it. You know what I mean? Some of your body has to go through that process, you know what I mean, to calm down. And so I love that you said that, because I think sometimes we need to hear that. Like, it's okay to feel that way. Let's figure out what we could do, and then we can come back and try to process it to do better the next time.
I think key for me is giving yourself permission to be anxious and then figuring out what works and what is the cause of the anxiety. So is it, oh, hey, I don't feel safe right now? Or is it more of, oh my gosh, you know, what if this bad thing happens, whatever that bad thing might be, right?
Yeah.
And so once we give ourselves permission to feel that, then we can come up with a solution and or coping skills. And sometimes it's both. Sometimes we need the coping skills as we're working our way to that solution, whatever the solution is. But I think I spend an inordinate amount of time telling my clients, it is okay to feel the way you feel, but let's figure out how to make you feel better.
Yes. My pastor puts it this way. She goes, your feelings have no allegiance to you. And so okay, I can feel what I'm feeling, but I ain't about to, go down the rabbit hole. Let me try to hone it in, get understanding. I love that you say that. And I just wanted to make sure before we wrap up, because I want to be cognizant of your time. If you were going to say 3 things that we could do on a regular basis to help us hone in on anxiety, what would those be?
So first, let's gain some self-awareness and recognition that, oh my gosh, I am feeling anxious right now. That would be my first thing. Because if you are not aware, then you can do nothing for it.
Yeah, okay.
Start with awareness, right?
Okay. One, awareness.
And then it's, okay, well, let's find some coping skills for this, right? Okay. And so let's talk a little bit about some coping skills. Again, yes. I said we should have 30, but at the end of the day, I think breathing exercises are so very powerful, and you can do so many different ones. I taught kids breathing exercises in a school I worked at, and we did all the cute little ones. We did the, hey, you're holding pizza for lunch and it's really hot. So you're going to breathe in and blow on it and cool it off so that you can eat it, right? Hello. They loved that one. And then there was the flower metaphor, like, oh, let's breathe in and smell the flower, right? And so, or the hot cocoa, hot chocolate, whichever you prefer, right? And so that works so well for children. For adults, I literally have a Haberman sphere at work, and I make my clients open it up to the count of 5. And then I tell them, hold it open for 3 counts and then close it for 5, right? And so as they're opening and closing the sphere, and I've settled on the magic number is 5 breaths with my clients in my office, right? Okay. Because by breath number 5, you can just see their body start to relax. Okay.
Okay.
It's only not happened with one of my clients. And I was so stunned. I didn't know what to do then. It was heartbreaking for me. I was like, this didn't work. I got to find a new trick.
Dirty coping skills.
Right. Let's find some more. But the majority of my clients, by the time they've gone through that 5th breath, it's almost like their body just sighs and releases, and their vagus nerve is then like deactivated is the word I use, right? Okay. So that one's a thing. So I really like the Haberman sphere for that. You can do square breathing. I don't have anything square around me right now, but you follow the square. Thank you. You follow the square. So you breathe in and out, go down, in, out. So you just do that for as many times as you want. I would probably recommend starting with 5, right?
5 breaths. Okay.
So that's something that will give you that. I do want to touch on, I had not known this, but God's name, Yahweh, is breath work.
Yes. Yahweh. Right? Don't get started.
So we as Christians need to be doing that breath work. because not only does it reduce our anxiety and our fear, but it increases that connection to God. And we want to be able to do that, right?
Yes.
So, other things, I have had clients that have recited times tables when they were feeling anxious.
Next.
I conjugated Latin verbs when I was anxious.
Oh my gosh. Next.
Wait, I love Latin. What are you doing, woman?
I'm sweating. I'm like, which one?
Okay.
That ain't gonna be my 30.
Next. Okay, next. You can do the 5 senses thing. Okay. So the 5 senses thing is really cool. But again, what does it do? It allows you to kind of de-escalate your nervous system. So 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, 1 thing that you can taste. Yes. So I like that one too, because not only does it refocus you, but it kind of calms your nervous system down. I tell everybody, learn to find a meditation that you like with a person's voice that you like. It's important that you like their voice. Okay. I wrote a beach meditation when I was in school for my master's degree, and then I incorporated the 5 senses into it. So when I do that meditation, people actually tell me, gosh, Rose, it was almost like I was really there, because they could smell sunscreen, they could feel the breeze, they could hear people walking in the background. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
So when you're looking at meditations, look for things that incorporate the 5 senses. So for that time period, you actually feel like you are there, right? And if you practice a meditation frequently enough, it doesn't take long. If I close my eyes for more than 15 seconds, I can be on a beach in my brain, right?
Yeah,
and then by the time I've walked through that meditation, I can open my eyes and I can be like, okay, what's next on my to-do list today, right? And so then you have to find those things. Sometimes with anxiety, I actually do clean, because sometimes it's my space that's making me anxious. And so again, there's that self-awareness piece. Like, what is making you anxious? Well, if it literally is, hi, I have paperwork stacked like 2 feet high on my desk. Yeah, that's going to make me anxious. Maybe I should just clean the desk. Right.
Yeah. And that feeds into the 5 senses that you're talking about. Sidebar. All right, because your voice is like medicine for me. Do you have your beach meditation recorded?
I do not, ma'am, but I should do that.
We're going to set up an appointment. I need to get you recorded, and I'll send it out to you guys, because that right there, I could just imagine, because even just how you say hi, it's like, oh my gosh, she sees my soul. Like, you know what I mean? So I love that idea. So we're definitely we got to hook up to get that, because I think sometimes when people say meditate, I know for me, sometimes that can make me feel anxious, because that means you're leaving me with my thoughts and I'm trying to escape those. And so if I go to meditate, I need something to focus in on and a process. And so I think just hearing that and walking through with your voice, I think that is so like awesome.
Great. Okay, well, we will work on that. I have one more thing for children, though, that we have to cover, because it's important to me. When I worked with those children, so I did a worry box, because it was during COVID. Ohio was back in school, because, Ohioans don't not go to school. Don't get me started on that, right? And it was a K-12 school in rural farming, Ohio, 500 students. Half of them didn't mask because the parents said, oh, this is a fake illness. You know the drill, right? So what I did was I got a clear shoebox and I put worry box on it in stickers. And then I decorated it with all kinds of stickers. And then I wrote up a little piece of paper that said, hey, I'm worried about this. And I asked them questions on the piece of paper. And then I handed it out and I said, hey, can you guys answer these questions for me? They were second graders, so they were 7, 8-ish, right? And everything. And then I adapted it later to like, oh, they can just draw what they're worried about, right? And then when I left, I told them, I said, I'm going to take your worries with me.
Oh,
right? So wait a minute. So they didn't have to worry about those things anymore, because the counselor had the worries for them.
That's good. Like that's something that because you if you take something like that and you decorate the worry box, not only are you empowering your children, but it's and you just put it in your house. You go out the day, whatever, they coming from their day. They may not always tell us everything, but they can draw it out and put it in their worry box. Mommy and dad. And then you can take that to nighttime prayer. You know, God, I'm about to unravel. I love that. That is wonderful. Making a worry box, and the fact that you said I'll take them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's hey, I took your worry. You don't need to worry about that more. Let's go. You know what I mean? Like that is powerful, not just even that in that moment, but future moments.
And I think our children need to know that our parents are going to do their best to take those things from them, right?
Yeah.
Because I think of God and I think of Him always telling us, hey, don't worry about tomorrow. If I
Yes.
can take care of the sparrows, I can take care of you.
Yes.
And so I don't know how it happened, but that became the thing, Miss Rose would walk into a classroom and it would be like, hey, let me help you. Let me take this from you. Let me allow you this moment so that for a few short moments or maybe a few short hours, you don't have to worry because I've got this for you.
What else, Rose? What else is on your heart and your mind? Before you
I don't really know that, it's just so important to think that we as parents and friends can do that for somebody else. Like, okay, so I can't take away your worries, but you know what I can do? I can listen and I can validate your worries and I can say, hey, do you need a listener or do you need a solution person for you today? And I can honor what you need. And that's what I think Christian community is about. And that's what I try to bring to the table as a counselor, right?
Yeah.
Can I fix all of my clients' problems? No, ma'am, cannot, right? I'm not walking on water. But can I give them a safe space? And can we do that then for our children? So that our children feel safe enough to come to us and say, hey, Mom, I had a really bad day at school today. Or Mom, I'm afraid, right? Yeah. Like little Levi, already tentatively, people pleasing just the littlest bit, right? And everything, because we want to empower our children and we want to raise them to be healthy adults, right? I think that what we say is powerful too. So think about the words that you use. And when we say we're raising children, okay, well, what does that really mean? We're raising children. Yeah. Shouldn't we be raising adults?
Yeah, that's good right there. And keeping that in mind. Hold on. Mama Nat said that's what Jesus will do. Jesus is a coping skill.
I agree.
Okay, so you gave us some coping skills. Sorry, I got all up in my chest. 3 things that we can do throughout the day. Yes. Okay. When we talked about the 3 things that we could do in our daily life to help decrease the anxiety, you said awareness, coping skills, and before we leave, I have to get the third one. What's the third one?
Yeah, well, that would be a really good question because now I forgot what I was going to say because I went off on a tangent. Rose is ever so human. I think that, going back to that now, it's like figuring out what you need in order to heal then, right?
Okay. What do you need?
Because at the end of the day, coping skills they're only going to get you guys so far, right?
Yeah.
Coping skills are meant to be short term, right? Yes, ma'am.
Then the way the world talks about it. Okay, yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not the world.
I know, but I'm just saying that's why I love you, Rose, because and this is why you're here. And I feel like we could talk to you forever today. We'll probably do a workshop or something like that virtually so we can really hone in on some of these things, because we're taught that coping skills is something that you're going to continually do. And you're like, no, the third process is, what do you need to heal now? What do we need? So that way we're not always stuck in this space.
Right. Because do you want to cope with something for the rest of your life, or do you want to heal from it?
That part, heal.
Right. Let's work on healing. Right. And so, and then figuring out, okay, well, what do we need for the healing? I know I'm trying to read it too at the same time. Hi, Cece, trying to read your notes.
She's taking notes of what we say. I love me some Cece. She's taking notes. This is so what you're talking about. Yeah.
Thank you, Cece. You're doing a great job for us. But again, right? And I want to go back. Some of my coping skills, I use the same skills for healing, but I'm very intentional about the place that they have and what their purpose is in that moment. Okay.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, especially because earlier that's what you told us about, having your coping skills and having your healing skills and knowing the difference. And that goes back to that self-awareness type thing. Because I think a lot of times we don't realize that a lot of us are healing from being yelled at because of spilt juice.
So again, the other thing, and I jokingly said one time I was going to design a tattoo for one of my clients, because he was dead set that his thoughts and his emotions were always 100. Oh, yes. And I turned around one day and I said, you like tattoos, right? And he goes, yeah. And I said, well, I'm going to design one, and it's going to have a thought bubble, a plus sign, a heart, a not equal sign, and the red 100. And he looked at me and he goes, oh. And I said, your thoughts and your feelings are only 100 in the moment that you have them, because anything can happen and change your perspective on it.
Yeah, that's true. I love it.
And we get so caught up thinking, oh, my thoughts are 100%, my feelings are 100%. Yeah, in the moment, because I never want to not validate that person's feelings. But how many times have we gone back, even a few hours later, and went, oh my gosh, I don't know why I was so upset. Right?
Yeah. And it's even in scripture, it says, hold every thought captive. And so it's kind of like, I love reading that, because it's like, why am I holding it captive? Because where did you come from? What is your source? I'm processing. When you hold somebody captive, I don't know what quite to do with you yet, but let's analyze this. And so that's even scripturally based. So that's good. So I'm gonna wrap us up here. Any final thoughts, Rose? Because man, you are a wealth of knowledge.
I don't know. I just tried to give you guys what I thought God wanted me to share with you. I think that there were times he spoke and I just kind of mouthed it, to be honest.
Yes, you preached a sermon. You had like 5-6 sermons right there. And it wasn't even, the pulpit. It wasn't even preaching, but it was so profound. And those are some great takeaways. Cece said, this is good. This was good. Agreed.
Thank you. I am so happy that you thought it was good, because honest and truly, this was really more about God than it was Rose, because I wrote my cheat sheet. I don't think I really used anything on the cheat sheet except a few things.
Well, send it over, because I'm literally about to make a reel about your worry box. And we're going to give credit to Miss Rose. Okay. And I'm going to definitely make a list of the breathing techniques you did, because oftentimes we'll hear breathe, but what does that mean? You know what I mean? And so we're going to develop some of these ideas that you're talking about, because we need to change the narrative around something like anxiety. And we need to give people tools to help start us on that journey to healing, and in teaching our little human beings, so that way what the world is today around anxiety isn't going to be their legacy.
And that's what I want. I want to change that legacy for them. That's really so important to me, because I don't want children to grow up thinking that they have to be afraid of everything, or that they have to control everything, because that's a bad path to go down.
Yep. And I pray that as parents, we're not, that as God begins to speak to us, that he can help us to not cultivate that mindset, that frame of thinking, such as being a helicopter parent. That's so much to chew on, Rose. So without further ado, guys, please continue in the comments. Anything that you have, Rose and I will continue to check the comments and thought process. We're going to be working behind the scenes and really kind of figure out where God wants to go with this, because it is so, correct me if I'm wrong, Rose, when we said, okay, we're going to do, this, that's not anxiety, that could be something else. There's no way that we could have thought of how huge this is and how much it could be dived into it. So we'll work behind the scenes. Let us know what you want to hear more about with anxiety, and some more thoughts that you have on it, so that can help us to fine tune our needs. So as we continue to have these conversations, we really focus in on getting a hold of something like anxiety. All right. So love you guys so much. Continue to have a great week on purpose. Thank you so much again, Rose, for your time. If you could stay on for me for a moment, I will let you guys go. Next week, we will not have Mommy Mondays. I will be using that Monday to fine tune some things for the prayer workshop I'm doing. Check it out on our page. I have a flyer out there as far as helping us to have how to effectively pray for our families. So much goodness that's going to be in that. So we won't have Monday for that, so I can prepare for that. So keep that in your prayers. I love you guys. See you again soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.